Yo, what is going on, you guys? It's Young Cards here. Welcome back to the channel, and today I'm going to be teaching you guys how to mix and master your beats in FL Studio. So without any further ado, let's get right into it because there's a lot to go into. Alright, so here we are in FL Studio. You got your beat. It's all ready to go for the mix. However, you haven't mixed it yet, you haven't leveled it, you haven't mastered it yet. How do you approach that? Well, I'm going to show you all that today. So this is what the beat sounds like right now, unmixed. I don't know why I'm bobbing my head to that because it sounds like complete ass right now. So we need to fix this. So how do we do it? So let's start off by turning, or actually not turning, but what we're going to do is we're going to hit cut itself on each sound that we have in our channel rack. All right. So we just selected cut itself on every single sound in the channel rack. Now with the 808, I'm just going to go ahead, turn on the envelope, turn the attack down, hold all the way up, decay all the way down, sustain all the way down, release time all the way down. And what that will do is it will do some extra cutting of the 808. So if you have the 808 placed in like right next to each other, like two 808 like sounds placed next to each other in the playlist, it will not overlap. All right. I don't really know how to explain it, but it prevents it from overlapping when you're arranging the beat. Okay, so now we got that out of the way. The next thing I usually do is I turn all of these channel racks all the way up, just like so. Okay, after doing that, I'm going to go ahead, open up the piano roll on my first sound. So this is my chord sound. I'm going to hit Control A, hold down Alt, scroll up on my mouse wheel, and that will turn up all the note velocities. I'm going to move my mouse up here, scroll down, it will go down to the next, it will go to the next sound when I scroll down. And then we're going to continue the same process. Control A, hold Alt, turn the velocities all the way up. Alright, so I'm just going to do that for each sound. And for your hi-hats, if you have some crazy hi-hat rolls going on, you have different volumes for them, just make sure you set your highest hi-hat volume to the highest level. So for example, all these hi-hats are the same, but like this roll right here, if you have something going on like something like that where it's like turning itself down, you don't want that to obviously be turned all the way up because then your hi-hat won't make that really cool roll effect or that volume effect that you applied to it. So you want to just take your highest sound and your hi-hats and turn that all the way up, and then just leave the rolls alone. Okay, but for this tutorial, I don't need to do that. I'm just going to leave all my hi-hats turned all the way up. Okay, we're going to turn the open hat all the way up, 808 all the way up, kick all the way up, and then that's it. All right, so now that we've turned all of those sounds up, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to head into the mixer. Now before we do that, we're going to hit Control, click on our first sound. You may have to double click, and then all your sounds will be selected in your channel rack. Now go into your mixer, click on your first mixer insert, hit Control Shift L on your keyboard, and then all of your sounds will be placed in the mixer. All right, now I color coded my sounds just to make it a lot easier for you to understand what's going on in this tutorial. So I'm going to start off by mixing all of these inserts. So this usually is just consisting of EQing. That's pretty much all you're doing when you're mixing. You might want to add little effects here and there, but for the sake of this tutorial, it's really all about EQing. So I'm going to go ahead and EQ the chords. So I'm going to open up Parametric EQ2, and I'm just going to go ahead and cut out all the low end frequencies up to about 300 Hertz on this. Alright, and what that will do is it will prevent the melody from overlapping with the 808. So your 808 doesn't sound muddy. Alright, and now there's a lot of high-end sound going on in this particular sound that I'm using in Electra X. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out some of that high-end sound because it's a little bit ear-piercing. And I did that just by dragging that down, cutting out those frequencies right there. Alright. Now we're going to go to the next sound and EQ my counter melody. Okay, again, parametric EQ. Let's go set that to 4. Drag that all the way to about 300. Yep, sounds pretty good there. And we'll cut out some of the high end just so it's matching with our first melody. And there we go. Now let's go to the clap. Now for the claps. So for the claps, the snares, the hi-hats, perks, open hats, you name it. What I do with those is I just have my own preset. So I deliberately made my own preset and I called it main. And this is all I do. I just take out the low end and that's it. Because for the most part, these claps and snares are mixed and mastered already. However, some of the samples may be, what's the word for it? May have some low end in it. So that's why I take out the low end for most of these sounds. So we'll go back to our clap insert and I'm going to show you what I just did there. So I'm just going to go ahead and remove that really quick from the snare. So we just finished with our clap. Alright. So now we're going to take this and you see the save preset as. We're going to left click and right click at the same time. Move it over to our snare insert. And what that does is it copies the same, it will copy the same exact EQ settings from this insert to this insert. Alright, and then we're just going to do that for the rest, such as the hi-hats and open hats. Because remember, the claps, the snares, the EQs, the perks, they don't really need to be EQ'd too much. Alright, so those are now all EQ'd. Now, I'm going to go ahead and EQ my 808. Now, before I EQ my 808, I do want to add a little effect to it. So I'm going to open up Fruity Blood Overdrive, and then I'm going to use the boost preset, so it gives my 808 a little bit more thump. Now we're going to go to my second slot, EQ my 808. You don't really need to mess with the low end in the 808, but more or less the high end. So I usually like to take the high end out of my 808s. You don't have to do that, but you know, that's what I like to do. I mean, you really don't even have to EQ the 808, to be honest. But I like to anyway. So now we're going to go to the kick. Alright. Now for my kicks, what I like to do to give it more thump power is I open up a Fruity Soft Clipper and I use my kick preset. So you can copy this if you want. And then I'm going to go ahead and open up Camel Crusher. I will leave a link to this in the description if you want this VST. It's completely free. And then I'm going to use my kick preset. Again, you can copy these settings and notice that the kick is getting really powerful. I need to take a deep breath. There's a lot to go into detail with here. Alright, so I'm going to turn my Camel Crusher down to about 50% because it's a little too powerful. And now I'm going to EQ my kick. Just going to go ahead and take some of that high end out from the kick because there's a little bit too much high end. And then that's pretty much the mixing part of... That's pretty much the mixing. So this is what it sounds like right now. So a dramatic difference in the way it sounds. However, it still sounds a little muddy and we still need to go ahead and fix the beat. Alright? So, before we even get into leveling... Alright, there we go. Trying to shut all the sounds off. Before we even get into leveling, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take off this Fruity limiter, and right away it will make a dramatic difference. Now that's too hard. So what we need to get out is a Fruity Soft Clipper under our master. And what that will do, it will basically prevent the whole beat from clipping. So now if you listen to the whole beat, it's not clipping as much as it used to. So now we got that. So the next thing we need to do is we need to do leveling. This is the last part in mixing and mastering your beat. All right. So actually, there's one thing I forgot to mention. For the 808 and the kick, this is not leveling yet. This is just mixing and mastering. For the 808 and the kick, I forgot to mention, if you select the kick sound, you want to, all right, so here's the kick. All right. This is what it's going to look like by default. All right. And what you want to do is you want to click this little arrow here, and what that will do is it will bring the kick and the 808 together. What's the word for that called? I forget the word. But basically, it will bring the 808 and the kick together, and it will allow the kick to be more noticeable throughout your beat. So I'm going to turn this knob all the way down really quick. Alright, so if I turn this knob all the way up, you're going to notice a dramatic difference in the way the kick is presented in the mix. So I recommend, I forget the word. What's the word for it? Does it tell me the word? Maybe I'll remember the word later, but basically you want to bring them together by clicking that arrow, and this will basically adjust how much kick power you will allow to be combined with that 808, if that makes any sense. So this is 25%. That's 125%, and the kick is a lot more noticeable. Okay, so I forgot to mention that. Make sure when you're on your kick, you click that arrow, and it will bring the 808 and the kick together to make the kick more noticeable in the mix. I forget the word for it. I'm actually surprised I forget the word for that right now, because I know it off the top of my head all the time. But that's that. Okay, so now we're going to get into leveling. So when it comes to leveling, the first thing I mess with is the kick. All right. Now the key thing with the drums is you do not want it to exceed -6 decibels on the master. So what do I mean by that? Okay. So even though my kick here in this insert is set to -6.5, if you look over here, that's the actual volume of the sound. And look, it's going above -6. You never want your kicks to go above that point, because they will have massive clipping at the end of your mix. So, to avoid clipping in your mix, we're just going to turn that down, and we're going to make sure that does not exceed -6 decibels. All right, I'm going to make sure you guys really see this, because this is some secret sauce that I've learned from people. Okay, so I set my kick to -8.5 decibels. But here's the actual volume of the sound. It's -6. That's where you want it to be in your mix. All right, that sounds low, but it's not low once you hear the overall piece. All right, so now you got your kick leveled. Next, I will bring in the 808. Now, one thing I do like to mention, the one thing I do want to mention with the 808 is I don't want it to go above -6 decibels or go above the volume of the kick, because then the kick is going to be less noticeable. And it may even override the kick, and you may not even hear the kick at all. So I'm just going to turn this up to where I like. So it's just under -6, and it's not as loud as the kick. So that's good. That's what we want. Now the 808 and the kick sound really good together. Alright, so now for my claps, what I like to do with my claps is I like to bring my claps up to let's see, I think up to 0 decibels is what it is, right? Yeah, so for my claps, my snares, I like to bring them up to 0 decibels. So you can see my clap is set to -5, but the actual volume is about 0 decibels. That's what I like to do for my claps and snares to keep them nice and loud and noticeable throughout the beat. And then for the hi-hats, you want to make sure, alright, so for the hi-hats, you want to make sure that they don't go above -6 decibels as well, because then the 808 and the kick are going to come together with those hi-hats, and it's going to create massive clipping. So let me show you what I'm talking about. So I'm going to bring all the sounds together. So you see, the hi-hat is playing, alright, let's make it more noticeable. So you can see the hi-hat is playing way above -6 decibels. Now I don't know if you can hear this, but the hi-hat is clipping pretty hard right now. And what that means is there's some distortion going on in the hi-hat. I don't know if you can hear that, but it's not clean. So if you want to make your hi-hat sound really, really clean, you want to keep it below -6 decibels, kind of like the 808 and the kick. Now I'm going to keep it around -9, because that's a good safe marker for your hi-hats, and they're still pretty loud. Alright, so there's your hi-hats. Alright, on to the open hat. For the open hat, I usually like to make it a considerable bit lower than the hi-hat sound. So the hi-hats are usually going to be around -6, -9 decibels. And for the open hat, I usually like to have it around -12, -15 decibels. Alright, so that's 15 decibels. I think I'm just going to leave it there. So the other thing you can do is you can repeatedly press the space bar and then notice how the sound goes up, goes down. So you really get a good idea of how loud the sound is. Alright, so there's that. Now we're on to the last two things in our mix, the chords and the melody, basically your melodies. I just have them labeled chords and melody for some reason, but yeah. So, right, for this, I usually like to keep the melodies below or at -12 decibels. And that will basically keep the melodies from clipping. Alright, it's all about avoiding clipping. So your beat sounds really nice and really clean. Alright, so here are my chords. So you can see my melody is getting really close to -12 decibels. See, right there. It's at -12 decibels. Alright, you don't want to go beyond that, because then the melody is going to overthrow the drums overall. And you don't want that, because then it will give your drums a really muddy effect, and no one's going to really like that in your beat. Alright? Okay. And then the same thing goes for my counter melody. Sometimes I like to have my counter melodies a little bit lower, but in this case, I'm going to keep my counter melody around -12 decibels as well. And there we go. I'm really happy with this mix. So, that's how you mix and master and level in FL Studio. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, hit that like button, comment, and subscribe. Don't forget to follow me on my social networks. Links are in the description below. And if you want my Mars MIDI kit, link is also in the description below. And that is all for me today, and I'll see you guys in the next video.